Well, Neil is actually my cousin. So he was the first person that I approached to share his story, and he is doing phenomenal. He has gone from absolute darkness to absolute light and just knocking it out for Jesus.
Tell me a little about your story, because you started out with an injury from a basketball game, right?
Yep.
And at 18, things started to escalate from there. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Started to escalate kind of quickly. So that was the year 2000. And back then there was very, very few regulations on narcotics and painkillers as doctors prescribing them. And so when I had my first surgery, actually I had my second surgery just a few months after my first surgery, just a back surgery. I had a herniated disc from playing basketball. And they gave me literally unlimited painkillers, a prescription bottle that said unlimited refills on it. And, for a long time, I blamed, the doctor for my problems. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have that. But, to be honest, like I went nuts pretty much right off the bat. I got them and I took them like I was supposed to for maybe a couple of weeks, but I also moved for my freshman year in college. I moved away from home for the first time right after I hurt my back. So I was out of the house for the first time and I had unlimited painkillers. So within weeks, I was taking 10, 15, 20 at a time. And every couple of hours, every hour or two, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and use the bathroom, and I'd take a handful of them and just go right back to sleep, because they were unlimited. It was free and unlimited basically. So I didn't see a problem with it. I probably knew there was something wrong with it, but again, I was 18 and had unlimited use or access to painkillers. So that went on for about 4 years, because I kept lying to the doctor. After my second surgery, I was better. He fixed me, but I kept lying to the doctor and telling him that I wasn't better, that it was still hurting me, that it was still killing me. So I was given pretty much unlimited painkillers for 4 years. So you can imagine by the time that he figured out I was lying to him, and cut me off, I was first time that I felt real fear, just dread, because I didn't know what I was going to do. Like that was my whole life for 4 years. And so yeah, it escalated quickly. I had to figure out a way to get those drugs on my own now. And I did. I started dealing drugs pretty heavily, started messing with other kinds of drugs. And, it wasn't long that I was in active addiction for probably 18 years. And I would say 10 years into it, I started IV drug use. So I started shooting up painkillers. After a while, I got into meth. You name it, cocaine, every other type of drug there was. And it escalated from there. So it went from getting them for free to manipulating, lying, and stealing, and doing everything I could to basically feed my habit, or to not feel sick, because at a certain point it wasn't fun anymore. It was just, if I don't do this, I'm going to be very sick and I'm not going to be able to get through the day.
Was anybody trying to help you as you were going through this?
I was really good at hiding it. There was only a few people that really knew. I would say the last 5 years or so, my wife was with me pretty much the whole time. So I hid it from her, from my family, everybody pretty well. I would say that the turning point in that was my wife found that I had ran a credit card up for like $8,000 in cash advances, and that she found out about. And that's, I think, when she realized that I wasn't just having a good time, partying a little bit too much. Like I had a problem. And so for 5 years there, yeah, she absolutely knew, and it was horrible on her. But I don't think anybody really knew how bad it was.
When did you start coming to Jesus? When did Jesus enter the scene?
Well, so I was raised in the church. Basically what I learned in church, or what I remembered during all this time, was that if God is real, hell is real. And so what I did is, when I went to college, one of the only classes that I really paid attention in, that I actually minored in, was philosophy, because I followed this atheist professor around to 3 different colleges, because he could spin this argument against the existence of God so well, something I needed to hear. I needed for somebody to tell me and prove to me that God wasn't real, because if he was, like, I was in trouble, so I needed that. And so I learned all these arguments against the existence of God. And so by the time I had ran my course, so towards the end of it, at about the 18th year, so about 3 years ago, I had tried to kill myself a few times, because I had tried all kinds of stuff to get off of drugs. I tried doctors, I tried meetings, I tried all these different things, and nothing was working. And I just knew that I was going to die like this, that was going to be the end of me. So I tried to speed it up, get out of the way. I was certain that there was no God, and I just figured it was like on the Terminator movies. When Terminator dies, the red light goes out and it's just over with. That's kind of how I figured it was going to be. So I got arrested, thank God, and thrown in jail. And when I did, my wife and my parents, they found Renewal Ranch, which is a year-long faith-based recovery facility. And I did not want to go to that. There was no way. I did not want to go to that. And, but my wife was leaving if I didn't. My wife was taking my twins, my 18-month-old twins at the time, if I didn't. So I agreed. Yeah, all right, I'll go. So even when I got there for the first few days, they have these pastors come in and teach, and everything they were saying was just bouncing off of me. Everything they'd say, I was rolling my eyes. Okay, all right. But they give you all these verses that you have to learn while you're there. So they give you a sheet of verses that you have to learn. My third day there, I was walking out of class, and I dropped my binder, and the sheet of verses fell out. And so I picked it up and I looked at the verses, or I just happened to look at it, and it was like there was one verse that just popped out. It was the only thing on the sheet. And it was Jeremiah 33:3. It says, "Call to me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that which you know not." And even then, I just, all right, I rolled my eyes. I said, okay, you'll answer me, huh? And so that night, though, I was laying on the couch in the dark by myself, my wife at home, my twins at home that I wasn't going to see forever. And just everything just crashed down on me. And I started thinking about what I'd done with my life, and what I'd done to the people I love, people that trusted me, and my family. And I mean, I couldn't breathe. And that verse popped in my head. And so, like, all right, well, what can I lose? So I started to pray for the first time in years. And I just remember saying, I'm sorry. And I asked him, I said, if you're real, if you're really there, I can't do this anymore. You've got to do something, because I don't want to do this anymore. And just like that, it's like I was in the dark and somebody flipped a switch, like the lights came on, and this weight came off of my chest, and I could breathe again.
Aww.
And anyway, so I sat there for probably the next 2 or 3 hours, and just talked to God. I was like catching up with an old friend, just talked. And but I remember laying there, and I was laying so still, and just kind of dart my eyes, like looking around, because I could not figure out like what was going on. Like, what is this? And I wouldn't say it happened immediately, but in the next few weeks, you'd start finding me in my bed at the ranch with 2 or 3 Bibles open up, different translations, reading, trying to figure out what was going on. That was the encounter that changed me, that began something in me.
Was your wife a believer when this was going on? She was.
I mean, yeah, she was. Her mom had more faith than anybody I've ever met. And she'd pass it on to Rebecca, and Rebecca was definitely a believer and prayed all the time about it. But there's only so much that I could do to her, because I took all hope out of her life. She had twin babies that had no father. She just knew like I did that I was going to die from this. And so she just felt trapped. And she definitely had faith, and she definitely prayed, but there's only so much that you can do when you're just that beat up constantly. And she definitely had a lot of faith, and kind of always prayed for me, and her and her mom always prayed for me.
Only God can take you out of that. Only God. And because of their faithful prayers, they basically put it all in Jesus's hand, and your life got saved by that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It looks like in the book it says your wife Rebecca and you became baptized together. Talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So that's I'd say another example of God's perfect timing. So Rebecca's mom had always wanted to see her get baptized, and so when I got to the ranch, we kind of both were just crazy convicted about it. We both I was baptized when I was 11, but like I told my dad, I'm pretty sure I could take another dip. I don't think it would hurt anything. So, and she wanted to get baptized. So, her mom actually was diagnosed with breast cancer just a couple months before that. And so, we were able to get baptized together, and her mom was able to come and see it. And just, a few months before she passed. And so it was just, it was just one of those God's timing things.
One part of the book that I love that Brad wrote about in your in the Colors of Salvation. God took a lying, thieving, manipulative junkie on the verge of death and breathed new life into me. He changed me from the inside out. He's changing me still. God is restoring me. Tell me how that makes you feel.
So here's kind of what I can say about that. Growing up in Sunday school and church, you what you hear, the big theme is that you invite Jesus into your heart. That's kind of what you keep hearing there, invite Jesus into your heart, which is true. That's definitely a big part of it. But I would say that the biggest difference between that, what I heard growing up, and what I experienced, as I was in the dark and lost and broken and just drowning, was that the real invitation is Jesus inviting you to leave it all behind and to give it all to him, and just because you don't have to carry it anymore. And I think that's one of the things that has changed me the most, is that I don't have to carry any of it anymore. Like the guilt and the shame, and it's just something that he wants. Like he wants to carry that for you. He wants you to give that to him. And man, for somebody like me, that was really good news, because I didn't want any of it anymore. I didn't want any of it. So I was more than happy to just hand it all over.
So tell me about the ministry you're doing in your church right now.
So Regeneration is a 12-step discipleship program. It goes along the same lines as a 12-step program, but it's biblically based. So more than a recovery, more than a sobriety program, it's more of a discipleship program that you learn how to spend time with God, and that's how you find freedom. I'm one of the leaders for that ministry. I visit the ranch every chance I get, go hang out with those guys. I visit and work with a ministry in downtown Little Rock called M18, from Matthew 18, the parable of the lost sheep. And so, really any chance I get to be involved, because one of the things that builds my faith more than anything is seeing these guys that have the same story as me. And it just, every time, nothing worked for them. Nothing was changing their life. And to find these ministries that know that when these guys come in, that they don't need to get better. What they need is to be born again. And that's what changes everything. That's what changes lives. And so, any chance I get to be involved with anything, around that, I'm all in. I would say, that I always grew up hearing about salvation and how Jesus saves you, and how that's always, I always saw that as, heaven, that when you die, Jesus saves you. He saves you from hell. But what I learned is that he can save you here, that he can save you now, and he can change you. And even though it might not change your circumstances, he can change you. And that's what matters. And things don't always get easier, since I was saved, since in the last few years since I was saved, I've lost friends to addiction. My brother-in-law, I lost my mother-in-law. My dad was diagnosed less than a year ago with pancreatic cancer and passed away in April. My son was diagnosed with autism, all this since then. But I can tell you that when my son was diagnosed that night, I hit my knees and I thank God that he gave him to us, because we will love that kid, right? And he's thriving now. It's amazing. It's a daily blessing watching that kid just grow leaps and bounds. When my dad died, he was probably my best friend, but the Bible says that God puts eternity in your heart, and it's true. Like it changes your perspective completely, and I can see that day when I see my dad again. So I have a hope that that I never had before. I have a joy and a peace about me that I never had before, and I just, my wife and I talk about it all the time. Like, what if I hadn't gone down this road? What if I didn't fall into addiction? And she always jokes that he'd be a vice president or something now, and we'd have all this money, but we both agree, like, but we don't know if we'd have Jesus like we do. And I'd trade that for anything.